Hi, my name is Nicole Avila. I'm from UTEP.
I'm Cassie Bedard, and I'm from James Madison University.
I'm Sandra Perez. I'm from Cal Poly Pomona.
I'm Diego Caldera. I'm also from UTEP.
And I'm Damien Rodriguez from Cal Poly Pomona.
We all want to be understood. We all want to be heard. We all want to be confident. But when empathy isn't there, miscommunication can happen. Engineering is one of the most male-dominant majors in STEM. For female engineers, it can lead to many different challenges. At school, I noticed that more female engineers focus on classes, work, and other responsibilities, more than the club's activities on campus. And I myself, being a female engineer, I asked why. They said because every time they join a club, a male engineer student would explain a project, but because of the terminology they used, they felt that the male engineer were being too cocky and made them feel out of place. Because of this, it felt it was a competition in the engineering world. And for something so simple, a simple conversation as a servo can lead to many miscommunications. Then I asked my male engineer friends and asked them about the communications. They said it was never their intention to make a female feel a certain way. Their assumption was they assumed they knew it all, not as they knew it all in a bad way, but because they're engineers, they assumed they knew what the conversation was about. A simple miscommunication and understanding can lead leaders to have no potential in growing with each other. As Damien can take on and explain how our project leads to miscommunication.
Hi, my name is Damien, and today I'll be describing customer jobs, pains, and gains associated with being a student engineering leader. Customer jobs are the functional, social, and emotional tasks customers are trying to perform, problems they are trying to solve, and needs they wish to satisfy. In our case, the customer will be the student engineering leader. The objective here was to walk a mile in their shoes. And as you can see, some of the customer jobs that we provided were leading independent projects to inspire, provide mentorship, having effective communication with their peers. Next, pains are the negative experiences, emotions, and risks that the customer experiences in the process of getting the job done. Again, we were able to brainstorm some of the negative aspects that were associated with being a student engineering leader. One of the most common ones was, the lack of resources or knowledge, the lack of interest, being belittled by others, prioritize money, constant pushback, and procrastination. Finally, gains are the benefits which the customer expects and needs. And some of the gains that we were able to provide were understanding others, feeling empowered, networking, becoming a better leader, having a new skill set, and helping the ones that come after you. And in the next slide, we will be able to justify why communication was our biggest pain, given by Nicole Avila.
So what we did is to find the biggest pain among student engineering leaders is we conducted independent interviews across the 3 campuses. So what we did is we just found student engineering leaders and asked them what are some problems they experience as student engineers. They listed as many as they could, and then we grouped them into subdivisions shown below on the chart to make sure they wouldn't be outliers so we can connect as much as we could. And then we put them in the chart based on how many times they were mentioned. So we found out communication was mentioned the most with 29%. The second was resources at 17%, and the third was judgment at 12%. So while 29% doesn't seem like the biggest out of 100, it was mentioned the most. We thought we should concentrate on communication. Then also out of the 13 interviews we conducted, we noticed that a little under half, 6 times it was mentioned that communication was listed as one of the top problems they experience as student engineer leaders. Some quotes I got from the interviews is people just don't know how to communicate. So either the students communicating to the leaders or leaders communicating to the students. Some people would say it would cause fighting amongst the group, so they would argue very much. And that's when we realized, as Diego will now state, how communication can lead to other problems.
So instead of, trying to create something traditional, I decided to create something more orthodox in a pain tree so that we can get to the root of the problem, which has been discussed by both Damien and Nicole. We have a group of pains that were listed here, but the main root of this entire issue is the lack of communication. So with this lack of communication can root out to be hard to communicate information, or the lack of information that's being provided because not enough communication is there. This will cause misunderstanding between each other in teams, as Nicole previously explained, which can end up causing issues such as belittling others or conflicts between one another. Through this, questions aren't going to be asked between one another, and that's going to provide pushback and the time management to be thrown out the window, which will then lead to procrastination, lack of interest, no motivation to actually do the project itself, which will then end up leading to no rewards for the work that they did, which unfortunately will not be much if this continuation of lack of communication continues. Now, Sandra will be explaining what type of reliefs can be provided and what we have figured out.
Thank you. So as my colleagues mentioned, there is pain and relief. Basically, we wanted to, once we knew what pain leaders have mentioned, we wanted to figure out a way to avoid the interpretation in the communication, feeling the loss of the imposter syndrome, not being belittled. These are some of the pains that we want to relieve. By doing so, we just wanted to create a product and service. So the product and service that we came up with is more like a class or a workshop environment to make it somewhat mandatory for engineering students to practice on, to practice of being vulnerable. Not only class taking, we also took in consideration of there are introverts and extroverts. Each leader is very different, so we wanted to have a mentorship for one-on-one, or have a safe space for them to want to express themselves or vent out. Self-motivation workshop as well. We also consider of making it into a game for those who are very competitive. So a friendly competition can also go a long way, such as a scavenger hunt possibility, as having students go out there and practice their communication skills with strangers, and then coming back with each other and express how their conversation worked, just putting in practice on. By giving these services and products, there is gain not just for the campus, but for the students. The gains that they get is more confidence, their network expand, the ability to talk to one another, the respect that they gain from one another. Not only just by having this simple communication skill is not just for leaders, it goes through into fellowship. With Cassie would sum it up.
So going back to our prompt, how might we engage engineering leaders across different campuses to help students make meaningful contributions to their community? We discussed this and we came up that we would like to create a safe space for building relationships, to create vulnerability, understanding amongst each other, and a common ground with not only leadership but followership as well. So how will we do this? We designed a communication program that's based on empathy. We'll start with a required course for all of the engineering leaders that are students. This course will help them build on these characteristics which we just listed. There will also be courses after this that will not be mandatory, but they will go more into detail into the communication that might be lacking in the various campuses. The reason for making only the first course mandatory is so that the engineering leaders are encouraged to go to it, and they don't put it off because they think they have better things to do. So how will we do this? Is there competition? There is not any competition that we can think of unless a university already has a communication program or class, but this class is specifically crafted for engineering leaders, which is who we're focusing on. So the cost will be absorbed in each university's budget. Each university can budget different ways when making a class. So this will be absorbed in just creating a class for that is absorbed in the tuition that students pay. Thank you for listening to what we have to say, and we hope that communication will improve across campuses.